Hey there, Saints. Pastor Dave here with another weekly devotional this Wednesday. I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 15 in the Message translation. And this was part of the lectionary text for this past Sunday, but I focused on the first part of it where Jesus has an encounter with the Pharisees and he gets into an argument about tradition. The lectionary continues with this section, but I did not cover this in the sermon, and maybe after I read it, you'll understand why. From there, Jesus took a trip to Tyre and Sidon. They had hardly arrived when a Canaanite woman came down from the hills and pleaded, "Mercy, Master, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly afflicted by an evil spirit." Jesus ignored her. The disciples came and complained, "Now she's bothering us. Would you please take care of her? She's driving us crazy." Jesus refused, telling them, "I've got my hands full dealing with the lost sheep of Israel." Then the woman came back to Jesus, went to her knees, and begged, "Master, help me." He said, "It's not right to take bread out of children's mouths and throw it to the dogs." She was quick. "You're right, Master, but beggar dogs do get scraps from under the Master's table." Jesus gave in. "Oh, woman, your faith is something else. What you want is what you get." Right then, her daughter became well. So, Saints, who do you think Jesus is? I think most of us have an image of Jesus, a concept of Jesus as someone who is always patient, always humble, always wise, always does the right thing, always compassionate, always goes out of his way to help those in need. And here in this story, we don't see that Jesus, do we? We see a Jesus who starts off apparently annoyed, who argues with this woman, who uses what might be considered some rough language with her, makes kind of an insinuation that she, as a Canaanite, is a dog as compared to the children of Israel, the people who God really loves and who he wants to pay attention to. And that kind of exclusion, especially with that kind of just rough language, just doesn't strike me as something Jesus would do or say. And yet here it is in Matthew's gospel. This is recorded as gospel story. I didn't want to preach on this because I don't necessarily know exactly how to deal with it. I don't know how to interpret what's going on here, why Jesus in this story seems so out of whack with Jesus in many other stories that we read. And especially the ending, the idea that this woman out-argues Jesus and causes him to maybe self-reflect, to decide he was wrong, and to change his behavior, his attitude toward her. I think it's troubling to me to imagine a Jesus who can be wrong. I think if we understand Jesus as the perfect, sinless Son of God, to say that he could do things wrong and need to be corrected by another human being, it's a little bit difficult theologically. On the other hand, what other explanation is there for the way Jesus is acting? Maybe that's actually an important word. Maybe it is, in some sense, an act. Because if you understand this story in the context of what Matthew has just told us about his arguments with the Pharisees over religiosity, over tradition, over doing the things that look good on paper but don't really get us any closer to God, then maybe what he's doing here is making some kind of object lesson out of this woman's request, that she wants to be in relationship with him. She wants to be in relationship with God through him. She comes from outside. She's a Canaanite. She's not part of the tradition. She's not part of the insiders club. But when she makes that request, she is doing something that is really at the heart of what Jesus wants all human beings to do, is to seek connection with God. And when he pushes back and says, "I can't do that for you," maybe what he's really doing is showing just how absurd the traditions, the rules that the Pharisees and others like them have built up that would keep someone like that away from God. Maybe Jesus is in some way trying to show just how wrong this behavior is before finally relenting, but in his mind it was always going to happen, relenting before those who are observing this in order for them to get the message that this sort of behavior, this preferential treatment for those who seem like they are the beloved of God is not really what God wants. But God wants all who seek him to be able to find him. Saints, this is a weird and troubling story, and maybe that explanation isn't good enough for you. Maybe this is a story that really challenges you to think about who Jesus is, and if Jesus behaves in ways that you don't expect, what does that mean? What are you going to do with that? That's your devotional this week. Hope it's helpful and worth thinking about for you. I hope you're doing well and staying healthy, and I will see you all again soon. Take care, saints.